and he was so nice, and for 20 minutes, which is a long time in 8th grade, and you're not going to believe it. Guess what his name is?
Ileana told Lisa that the boy she'd met had an extremely unusual name. And it turned out it was the same unusual name of her dead father.
And she said, well, don't you see, Dr. Miller? My father's watching over me.
Aww.
My father's protecting me. My father's right here with me.
I understand that shortly before she went on this dance, Ileana's grandmother had organized a traditional Dominican ceremony to honor her father. Describe the ceremony for me, Lisa. What happened there?
Ileana's family had a beautiful tradition that was coming from the Dominican Republic, a blend of many faith traditions in which they honored the deceased, much as many traditions do. What was important to Ileana was that when they held the ceremony to honor her father with prayers, with candles, with photos, Ileana, through the ceremony, knew her father's spirit was alive and real and in relationship to the family. So that shortly thereafter, when she met a boy at the dance who shared the very same name as her father, she had a depth of spiritual understanding that her father walks with her. She says, my father is looking after me. He is protecting me.
I understand, Lisa, that you had a similar experience working on a psychiatric patient unit. Tell me about what life was like on that unit and an unusual intervention that you came up with at one point.
Shankar, I worked on an inpatient unit in Manhattan where so many of the patients suffered terribly. Some had recurrent, very deep major depression. Some struggled with addiction, others schizophrenia. The time in which I happened to be an intern on the unit was the time of the Jewish holidays. This hospital happened to serve a great number of people who were Jewish. As the holidays approached, one morning in our community meeting, a gentleman raised his hand. He was someone who was known as very explosive as he struggled with bipolar. He'd become very angry, maybe toss a chair, yell, and march out. So it was he, of all people, who raised his hand in a full community meeting, 30 people in a circle under the flickering lights. He raised his hand and said, what will we be doing for Yom Kippur? And the unit chief, a very nice man, sort of looked at his foot and said, I'm sorry, we don't have anything. The rabbis will be going home to their families. What? Nothing for Yom Kippur? He more and more upset, explosive, tossed the chair and walked out of the room.
So I understand that you decided to arrange an informal Yom Kippur service on the wall. Describe the scene for me.
Well, I'm not a rabbi, but I did have at that time about 2.5 decades of experience with Yom Kippur services. So I approached the unit chief, who gave me permission and said, sure, if you want to come in on Yom Kippur, that's your decision. I found in a box in my apartment a beautiful weathered prayer book that had been my grandmother's. That day when I arrived to the unit, the patients were all dressed beautifully. No hospital gowns or gurneys. Our so-called sanctuary was the back room, the kitchen, with its linoleum table and its fluorescent lights, but it felt sanctified. And there we were. There were 4 Jewish patients, and by their side each had an aide who very graciously joined in our ceremony. As we started to move through the prayers, it was the gentleman who had been so explosive and so-called chaotic who was holding the cadence of our prayers, who was davening realized that we can be forgiven. All around the table, whatever had caged in their soul was superseded by the radiance in this moment of their spirit. It was extraordinary. And so I realized,
clinically ill, but you felt that in their own way, they were also not healthy?
Shankar, once we see in its intense to I'm off the subway, the dinner party, and see a whiff of depression and anxiety. To I'm off the subway, the dinner party, and see a whiff of depression and anxiety. So I like countenance, what weighs on them. One day, Shankar, I saw a gentleman whose eyes bright like the sun. He wasn't smiling across his mouth. There was a joy through him. Across his mouth, there was a joy through him. He was an Orthodox Jew. And in this struggle of more suffering than we really need to have in our lives on the subway, Frank. And it was the illusion. That not probably more like the 78 driven by good things. We weren't obsessed with money, driven by the purpose of our work, mission of our work. But I'd say that there was lopsidedness. We were getting a little narrow in our focus. And the people we loved very much, who were so kind, we could turn to in a moment of loss or pain, good friends, lived in the same culture with us. Our dinner parties would have a lot of talk about, well, once I make partner, or if we can move over from second Lexington, or, there's a promotion coming up, or I'm moving from and there was sort of almost a low-grade Monopoly game going on that was narrowly achievement oriented, and it felt empty as a tin.
One small thing that made you smile today is the prompt from YouTube. Okay. Well, you'll have to watch.
Lisa, there's a clinical term called
hidden brain.
dysthymia.
You have to listen to hidden
what does
brain.
It mean?
Dysthymia is a low-grade, nagging, haunting, sort of like a milquetoast gray depression. It's a dissatisfaction, anhedonia, where things don't delight us. We fail to experience the full delight of life. Dysthymia is quite prevalent. It's very prevalent in young people.
Capitalism.
If we don't like our job, if we haven't found our deeper path. Dysthymia is a low-grade depression that lingers and lingers and even becomes livable. So it